So here we are. I'm Margaret Welty, and this is Draw Here Now, and we are going to do something that I've wanted to share with you, and that I've taken to another step on the trace in place. So there is another video that shows exactly how to trace in place, but I'm finding that my students are loving this, and it's really giving them, these are my college students, but you could do this with 4-year-olds. It's giving them a chance to work on their skills for following lines, composing. And so I just want to start by saying that this painting, done by Henri Rousseau, called Tiger in a Tropical Storm Surprised, is a great example to me of how foreground, midground, foreground, and near or far, more near foreground, meaning this rolls back forward, works. So a lot of times we're thinking, I want to do a tiger, and then we end up just painting or drawing a tiger, but then we don't know what else to put with the tiger. So this shows you how the tiger is in a situation. The tiger is in a context. The tiger actually has emotion. And we see that when we develop characters and so forth. So this gives us a chance to see this very surprised tiger. And it is a tropical storm. This is all this rain coming down and blurring this area, which is awesome because the area is farther away. And as things go back, they blur. And as things come forward, they get big. This whole piece really reads as one piece plus this in front of it, overlapping it. So there's a lot of compositional devices that make a flat piece of paper here actually look like a scene in reality where there's a lot of distance to it and the foreground pulls forward. So that's one of the things I like about this painting. It's just one of the things. I do love this artist's work. So it looks like on here I can see that it was made in the late 1800s. So here we go. All right, so what I've done is I printed this and made it bigger. They said, oh my goodness, at the printer that this was going to get very blurry, but it's not too blurry for us because we aren't going to take it necessarily directly from here. We're going to first start by drawing on top of the lines and getting familiar with it right on this piece of paper. Once we turn this fully formed painting into a black and white and gray middle tone, this is just in tonal value, but this tonal value of this, the white and the black, it mirrors fairly perfectly, really, what the tonal value of the color would be. And so that's something just to start thinking about, is that color not only has hue to it, meaning it has color with it, it also has value. So it's not just the blacks in here that are dark, and then the blacks are the darkest dark, interestingly enough, obviously enough, but the other colors also have different amounts of darkness. And then you can see that when you go to this. And this, sometimes you have to get a pretty good printer sometimes for you to see, or you can sometimes see online or on a device what the tonal values are. Some printers tend to not separate the tonal values out as well. But here we have a really good record of the painting, which we're going to turn into a drawing. And we have an opportunity now to not have to read this through a piece of tracing paper. You could go directly to this tracing paper, but I want to show you maybe how to clean things up or how to decide to just get a few pieces of this to put in your own drawing. But you can see it just is a little bit less clear when we get this over it. But this is Canson tracing paper, which the best art stores carry this. Maybe all the best art stores don't carry it, but my favorite art store carries it. And National Art Store, and here we have the Canson. So it's very transparent, and that's what you want so that you can really see through it. So we could start right away with a fairly dark pencil, and if I were going to start right away, the first thing I would do would be to mark the corners of this, and then probably also either just pay attention to keeping the corners lined up with the tracing paper, or I would put down some, and I may do that in a little bit, put down some tape, some removable tape. So you see that we could start tracing on this right now. And we're good just like we are right now. We don't really need the tape right now as long as we just pay attention to what we're doing. And so I'm just tracing these bigger branches. But when I get here, the tonal values aren't particularly clear. So I'm going to see if this becomes more clear, and also that we get extra practice. Now, one of the things I love about this is this gives you practice actually drawing on top of a line. And that's one of the things about these Draw Here Now videos, is that I'm asking you to do things. Let me move this so this doesn't get confusing. This is another print, and this was done on heavier, more photographic paper. And this would also be a good one to use to look at because it's a little sharper on the photographic paper. I can see just a little bit better up here. Now again, when you enlarge, it gets fuzzy, but this didn't get too fuzzy. So I could use that. What I'll definitely use it for later is to look at, because you see that it's just a little bit more distinct in the lights and darks on this photographic paper than it is on the more matte and thinner paper that's usually also less expensive to print on. So I've got the tracing paper here, and I'll just stick that right underneath. And I want to show you that even with a pretty heavy marker, and even looking at it directly, you see that this is a little mushy. So this would give you a chance here with a Sharpie, or with a finer Sharpie. This is actually a fine point Sharpie, but there's Sharpies that are finer. But one of the things we're trying to do here is really be able to see where these lines are. The other thing I like about this is that we are turning this fully formed drawing, see right here, we're turning this fully formed drawing into a line drawing. Now it's still going to have all the tonal value in it that develops the form of everything, but it's going to be easier to trace and easier for us to see it when we're just working on it directly. This is something I can assure you I probably wouldn't have seen, which is this branch that comes out, and then I can follow it over here and see that this branch originates here, and then it bends over to here, goes under this branch. So you start to see how some artists weave things through the composition. And then this branch comes across. I'm making it a little bit more prominent here. I can diminish it again, but it's going to follow all the way over here. And interestingly enough, at a certain point, it has a leaf, it looks like, at the end of it. Now, if I were in a museum looking at this piece, I could see exactly what's going on, but I have to rely right now on photography. Now, I think that this might actually end over here, but one of the things that's interesting is when you're here and not just copying like in one local area, you start to see that Rousseau picked up this line all the way over here, and he mimicked this line again over here. So this is very much a part of this composition, that this line starts over here. It's actually kind of a double of this branch that comes from this tree over here. And so sometimes if we're just tracing, we're going to make a bunch of mistakes and not really see it for what it is. This is much clearer first just making a line drawing on the top of this. And again, like I said, you can determine with your line drawing where you want to pick up what you want to use. And if there's things that you don't want to use, you can just leave them out. And I'm pretty sure up here I'm going to want to have these lines because they're so beautiful, that are leaves that are way back, and they're also branches that are way back. But again, a branch that's as fat as these are would look pretty fat in the foreground, meaning back, if you didn't have such a fat tree up here. And so this tree, see, this is how wide this trunk is. And again, it might obscure because this is a dark tonal value here, and then the trunk is a dark tonal value. So when I'm just drawing first straight on the paper, it just gives me a lot of confidence to be able to explore and see what it is. You see me just coming behind this maze, behind this right here, and you see that this is an interesting line here because it's actually made by dark on each side of this kind of mazy, weedish, very light stem. Not light in tonal value, meaning not much tonal value added to it, not much gray added to it. But this is something that I also really like to explore myself and encourage other people to explore, and that is how we make form with overlapping. This overlaps these trees, and then the darkness of these trees. And by the way, you can turn this if you need to make it easier to draw more in a more exacting way. So you see I'm just coming right up here, but these aren't necessarily later going to be made with lines. They're going to be made with dark coming up along the edge of the form and the lines that you're describing. And that's what's great about finding a painting like this, because it's going to show you how to work your tonal values so that you don't have outlines. And we're just right here, right now, making a line drawing. And this is a lot of what you'll also see in animation. You'll see things moved into line drawings, but they're going to start out a lot of times as form. That's definitely how Lion King started out. He started out as a gestured form. And the Beast started out as a loosely drawn form, and then when they're going to go into getting ready to be animated, that's when they need to be turned into a line drawing so that that can all be worked digitally. So I am loving this drawing even more, this painting by Henri Rousseau, a French painter, painted it at the end of the 1800s, right around the time some fairly recent members of my family were born. And it's just so beautifully woven together. And then there's this tiger in it, and I've been picking out different parts of it to turn into a line drawing. So that is a good thing, all right? You can just see me right here, right now, making that a line drawing. And I was talking about how these parts here, along with a lot of other parts, are not going to actually have lines around them. And the trees don't have lines around them either. They change based on the tonal value. There's even a little bit of seeing this trunk back behind the transparency of this maze. So I'm just going to give myself a little dot, dot, dot there, and also here. And again, I'm first drawing on here before I go into any tracing paper. Now another little surprise, this is called Tiger in a Tropical Storm Surprised, and I'm going to turn it into Dragon in a Tropical Storm Surprise. So here's my dragon that I drew. I just took it off my phone. I've been enjoying watching this funny dragon that's everybody's going to train here. This is the year of the dragon, not really the real year of the dragon, but it's the year of this dragon that flies around. So I've used the butt of the tiger, and I'll probably go ahead and make sure that this tiger, again, this tiger is hard to see. Do you all see how he kind of blends in? And that's what a lot of animals do anyway, and that the most prominent part of seeing this line at the top of him, which I just made a lot bigger, is actually the stripes, which are their own fat lines with their own line quality that come along here and make this beautiful repetition. Now, this dragon is my dragon, and so I don't have to stick with what I saw on my cell phone. I can use these lines that I'm putting in for this dragon. I can use those lines on my tiger. I mean, oops, it's not going to be a tiger, on my dragon. Okay, this is the tiger, this is the dragon. This dragon's dark, so he's going to work really well here, coming from the dark of the tree and positioning over here to the dark of this giant plant with giant leaves. And this is a great diagonal that's happening here, but you're also getting a lot of a repeat of what is happening with these trees here with his butt that has the tiger lines on it. So I'm going to finish out my tiger lines here, contemplating the entire time, you don't have to, but I like to, as to what each line is doing, how it's functioning with the whole. And I'm coming down here with, this is big foliage here, this is big foliage here. And this whole piece of foliage down here kind of all works together as one, and does have its edges right here, where again the tiger makes the edge with being kind of a mid-tone here, and kind of has this, maybe he even has, like my cat, white fur for his stomach, so this is a little bit white in here. And this is where, when you're tracing, you've got to be careful, because I kind of did a sawtooth edge there, and that means that I'm kind of stylizing what I'm seeing, and mostly just because I'm not really seeing that well what it is, because it's not that delineated. So what you have to do, you don't have to, but you might want to, is just be careful that when you do that, you don't turn that into the kind of like the truth about what's actually there, because that was just a quick repeat of the tiger. And this is another place that there's a lot of white that comes down here, that, and it's kind of broken up into a digitized deal here with the enlargement of the drawing. So just keep that in mind if your print is not maybe as true to the drawing or to the painting. Now I'm going to make just one line here, but again, this is a thicker line, or a line with some different quality, that comes up and becomes the center stem of all of these leaves. The other thing I want to make sure you understand is that you want to look at leaves and things like this and see, now I'm back in Tigerland, and you want to look and see how they're stacking up, you know, what's in front of what. Now I'm up in this tiger, and I'm going to just go ahead and put the tiger there, and then when I go to trace and place the tiger, I can decide where all I want to put the, here's his eye, what I want to use, because now you can probably see the tiger better, and you can see how I'm going to use, maybe I can make this darker. I used a pretty dark pencil, like a 5B pencil on this, but nothing like a black ink marker, so that you can see how I'm going to slip my dragon in. My dragon was looking a lot like a bunny before I noticed that the dragon also had some horns. And here I am with the wing of the dragon, and I'm eliminating the back here of the tiger. And if I want to position this leg a little more the way I'm going to have it, I can move it. It doesn't make any difference because what I'm doing right now isn't going through and it's not backed up with anything. Now I'm going to have to put my dragon in front of some of this foliage unless I bring the dragon's neck in more. If the dragon gets a little neck, which I don't think that's enough of a neck for the dragon's going to use up, the dragon can have a leaf going over his head maybe, but the dragon is going to have this. Now this is where I might have to figure out what kind of, go back to my cell phone and figure out, but I'm just going to throw this in here, what kind of arm. I can see that maybe I need like another leg for the dragon. Not sure what kind of anatomy this dragon, any dragon has in the front. He's got kind of like back legs that are more like a kangaroo or something, or a rabbit. So anyway, I'm just playing around. Everything I'm doing here isn't going on to here. I'm just playing around with figuring out how my dragon is going to fit over where the tiger is, because this is going to be a dragon in a tropical storm who's surprised. Okay, so the dragon can rest over here, and I'm back in business with my tracing of the drawing on top of the drawing. So I'm not on tracing paper. I'm just making this more and more delineated as I make a line drawing, delineated, a line drawing. And I would just continue this, making sure that I'm pulling out what it is that I want. Now, for sure, I'm going to want this. And this is a good time for me to say that it makes a difference how you trace. And I'm sure I mentioned that in the Trace in Place Draw Here Now tutorial video. But if you want to change something, you can, but don't change it just because you got sloppy with how you delineated it, how you went around the edges. I definitely want these things to be the way they are if that's what I want to keep. So there I have done quite a bit of drawing on top of this in order to see clearly what actually is here. And I would finish this out completely if you want to, before you would go to tracing, because you can see that this is all pretty easy to be traced without going over it with lines directly onto the print. But all of this is an amazing weaving of plants and foliage and countryside and lights and darks that in some ways just break into some kind of a beautiful abstract texture. And you're going to want to figure out how to work this. But we're going to go ahead and proceed in the next section with developing the tracing paper right on top of this drawing so that we can start getting this image on the tracing paper so that we can flip the tracing paper over and back it up, and then we can go ahead and place it onto the paper. So I've switched pens here. I was kind of running out of my juicy pen. That was a big juicy Sharpie pen, and any pen that'll go onto here is great. This is kind of a fancy, it's a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen, medium, black ink, black 199. So if you're interested in what is working here, it's working pretty nicely. I think I am going to get a whole bunch of pens so that I can proceed and they can rest. Sometimes if they just rest, they'll rehydrate and get back to being juicy pens. So here I am just working this up. Again, you can bring it closer to you if you need to get it closer, or turn it so that it's easier for you to draw something. This is some more of this maze, it seems like, some more of this grassy stuff that bends over and weaves. Again, it's this beautiful stuff that seems to weave and draw our eye into different directions. So I want a lot of that in, and a lot of this I can see through the tracing paper. So, and you'll be able to see that too. And you can just get some of your bigger and or even slighter bones in so that you don't end up without them, even though this is going to have subtle tonal value changes in here. In other words, this black right here is not that black, and this light next to it is not that light. So you're going to have less contrast as we move into the back quadrants, back areas of this piece. And that's going to be something that when you copy something, you get a chance to understand. And this is all about understanding and also about finding imagery that you could use. If you love this imagery as I do, then you might be drawn to going to ponds or going into tropical forests or just forests in general, or getting down on the ground right there at the edge of a cornfield or something and looking at how those forms behave, because that's the beauty of observational drawing. It's both using what this artist, Henri Rousseau, is definitely using what I believe he would see. This would be kind of unusual to, without actually being in a setting, it's kind of unusual to come up with this kind of complexity just out of your mind. So there's usually some kind of observation in the forest or by a riverbank or something like that. Now, we also have photography. So you can, anything you can photograph, you can print and trace in place. And I like that too, because when you photograph, you've actually been there and you're drawing out of your experience that includes the smells, the wind, the temperature, the humidity, the light, the way things felt just being there. And all of that just being there comes into your drawing. It comes into your experience. That's one of the reasons to be out and about, is because, gosh, it's so great to have some way of connecting to what you're seeing. And your drawing helps you connect to what you're seeing, especially if you don't freak out like, oh, I can never draw that. This is so complex. This is another way that you can see like, wow, if I just started with a couple of branches or had a trace and placing of some animal, because I doubt that you're going to be out someplace in this day and age, and I don't know that he was either, where you actually see a tiger. But you could go to where tigers are, Tiger Preserve, or, the Museum of Tigers, Museum of Animals, meaning the zoo, and be able to draw actual animals, not necessarily in nature, but in some kind of setting where the animals are alive and moving around, and you could photograph them and you could draw them. And so forth. So that's not a total fantasy anymore. It's still possible. So you see how I'm just coming around each one of these leaves, and this leaf is in front of that leaf, and then this leaf is in front of the previous leaf, and this leaf is slightly in front of that leaf, and then there's a space between these leaves. And that is the kind of stuff that makes for a lot of interest. Not that your viewer is going to just be sitting there talking about it like I am, but your viewer is going to understand the complexity of the jungle, shall we say, the complexity of this natural setting, and possibly more so the complexity of ourselves. When you see all of this overlapping and all of these different elements that come together, you can contemplate just like you do in nature, because you're in some kind of a nature and you can feel your own inner nature full of lots of complexities when you drop out of thinking in such a verbal way and go into a more visual reality. And drawing, either when it's on a piece of paper like it is here, or when you're out and about in a beautiful setting, or even in an urban setting, it causes you to, as I probably say often, as my students say, it causes you to lose yourself. And the part of yourself that you lose is that thinking, obsessing, repeating monkey brain. Not that monkeys are like that, but they call that monkey brain sometimes. And you start to be one with yourself and with the nature of what you are experiencing. Whether it's nature or it's an urban environment or whatever, you become one with it when you start to see it and actually draw it. So you can get that, though, from printing something on a piece of paper like I have here. And you see that I can speed up, but I don't want to lose something like this little white line. You know, this is really just part of the rain, but he's using it as a repetition and draws you right down here into these leaves. And it's a repeat of some of the viney and foliage nature of these other lines. And then apart from them being a part of this reality, they become something that plays on you, plays you in a certain way. When you submit to looking at something for a period of time, like I am with this drawing, and like you are watching me draw here, maybe you've already picked up your pencil and taken flight, so to speak, with printing something or grabbing a children's book or some other illustration that you just really like, and maybe not drawing in the book, but maybe copying it on some device that you have that copies, and then you can start to copy like we are directly onto it. I think even though this delays your trace in place and actually being in that mode of getting it onto the paper, I think it expands. I went a little wide there. I think it expands your ability to see something. Whenever you draw something, it expands your ability to see something. And whenever your ability to see something is expanded, your ability to see everything is expanded. And possibly your ability to feel more and have more of a sense of the nature of something else, which gives you a chance to have more compassion, more connection, and just have a chance to be a lot calmer than we are a lot of times, because when we do this, we're in the moment. And when we're in the moment, we're in the now. And when we're in the now, we're out of fear, unless the now is full of fear. But otherwise, we're just in a wonderful place when we make all these drawings. Okay, so this, you see, can go on in here, and it, I think, would be worthy of your time in something like this to spend the necessary time to understand this area that's so full of just many, many patterns, interconnection. It's full of interconnection, and it is actually the farthest back part of this drawing, except for right in here, which is a little bit behind this, and then this area that starts to come back over the top of it. So that's where you start getting the texture in this kind of rain up here. Okay, this could go on, and it may when I go to trace it, and there's no ending sometimes for how much we can get when the artist has provided such a rich, rich surface. And our job is to see it by drawing it.